The Tesla Model 3, 1 terabit internet connections, Dragon Ball Z in real life, that's what I like. Hello again guys, welcome to this whatever thing that I'm doing. That's what I like. Tech news, science news, fun stuff. Let's talk. First up, Amazon has announced they're releasing their very own game engine completely free. No licensing fees or anything. They've based it upon Crytek's Crysis engine, whatever it's called. They've added in Twitch streaming support. And like I said, there's no fees, there's no hidden costs, there's nothing to it. It's just take it and use it. And you can even use it to develop for both PC and console. And according to CNET, if you look down in the terms and conditions on this new engine, which they're calling Lumberyard, they've put in some clauses for what happens if there's a zombie apocalypse. So Amazon is definitely taking some steps in the right direction in terms of releasing things for free that can be really useful and having a little bit of a sense of humor about it. Moving on, there were loads and loads of stories coming out about the Tesla Model 3. I am absolutely pumped about that. I've never owned an electric car, but if I do ever end up buying one, the Model 3 is the one that's really at the top of my list right now. And according to an article on Techno Buffalo, they say that it could be as cheap as $25,000. They're saying it's going to be $35,000 up front, but with tax rebates and incentives and everything, it might get as low as $25,000. That is still, of course, dependent upon tax rebates and incentives and things, so don't expect to just walk out and say, here's 25 grand, give me a car. But that definitely brings it down into that very reasonable price territory. And according to Elon Musk, you can start reserving the Model 3 as early as March 31st of this year. I'm putting my name on that list immediately, like now, even though the list isn't even open yet. Gimme. The funny thing is, the Model 3 could be unveiled and it could be just an absolute terrible looking thing. It could have horrible range and I'll still probably register to get on the list. I'm on the list for the Powerwall thing. I'm still waiting to hear back about that. And they've said something about a Powerwall 2 coming, even though Powerwall 1 never really happened for me at least. But that's neither here nor there. Speaking of electric cars though, there's a Silicon Valley startup that is creating an electric go-kart. The go-kart is called Arrow and it's designed for kids, but the parents can actually control it using Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on your smartphone. You can tell it how fast it can go, what gear it's in. You can sort of communicate and control it entirely using your phone, except for the whole steering and starting, stopping, and everything. You can limit it, you can turn it off, as long as you're within range of it. The funny thing is, it's got a weight limit of 200 pounds, and it's like $600 to get it right now, with a top speed of 12 miles per hour. So I'm actually super tempted to pick one up myself. I don't think I would fit into it just size-wise, but still, it sounds like an awful lot of fun. And it can go for about 30 minutes at a time, so you're not gonna get a huge, long amount of time and fun out of it, but still, it's a little teeny electric car. Sounds like fun. Speaking of that sort of thing though, there was a ruling made this week. According to an article on The Verge, and it was in a bunch of other places as well, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, had to read that one because that's a lot of words, has actually said that the computer that you find inside of Google's self-driving car is a driver. Now, I don't think that organization has the ability to do any sort of lawmaking or real decision making, but that does sort of pave the way for potential other things to come, meaning making it a little bit easier for those laws to be passed to say these things are legal in all states or these things are available in more places. I'm still very much of the opinion that self-driving cars would be an amazing way to go. I'm sick and tired of driving. Speaking of Google's self-driving cars though, they want to add wireless charging into them. I saw an article on Techno Buffalo I'm reading here in front of me, and it looks like they want to put the panel in on your wall, the whole charging panel and everything, but then have a panel on the floor, I guess that's attached to that you just drive over and it will inductively charge your car. They call it the Hevo Power Station, which is in this little picture that you would probably have seen by now. I'd be willing to bet that it's not going to happen anytime really soon. Of course, Google's self-driving car in the home is not going to happen really soon, so we've got time. Self-driving, self-charging, wireless car would be a great way to go. Now, if Google would partner up with Tesla on that, yeah. Speaking of Google though, there were some rumors that came out this week that Google is supposedly building a new VR headset that's not Google Cardboard. Something that has an actual screen built into it that's wireless. So something kind of sounds like akin to Microsoft's HoloLens, or kind of like the Oculus Rift, but not wired into everything. And according to the article I've been reading, it looks like they may actually be integrating some more VR related things into Android as well. Obviously, Android was not developed with VR in mind. They've just kind of slapped some things on top of it when it comes to Cardboard and all of the VR apps that are associated with it. But just like they did with Android Wear, because they were putting Android on watches long before Android Wear ever came about, they extended Android to make it work with Wear. Hopefully they'll extend Android to make it work better with VR platforms. And I'm sure we'll hear more at Google I/O later this year. Speaking of VR headsets though, there was a leak about an Alcatel phone that's coming soon. The Alcatel, I'm gonna say One Touch Idol 4S. I don't have it in front of me because the article doesn't actually say it. But the cool thing about this new phone leak is that the packaging can be transformed into Google Cardboard. That is new, that is innovative, that is exciting. Not that Google Cardboard is really hard to come upon. I've got 2 or 3 of them in the drawer next to me because they were free. But having sort of an all-in-one, all-encompassing, really inexpensive, because the Alcatel phone's probably going to be under $300, having all of that packaged together with VR included out of the box makes for a very exciting experience. And continuing in that VR vein, Oculus came out with some of their Oculus Ready PC recommendations, and they start as low as $14.99 in a bundle. According to the article that I have here in front of me, it says the Asus G11CD, the Alienware X51R3, and the Dell XPS 8900 SE just barely make the cut, because they've got the GTX 970, they've got 8 gigs of RAM, Core i5 processors, and they're $1,500 to $1,600 when you put a Rift along with them. Realistically, considering the Rift was like $600 pre-order, you're talking $900 to $1,000 PCs, which is not all that bad. But if you want to go for the higher end stuff, you're talking $2,500, $3,000, bundled with a Rift again, but really high-end stuff. But if you're in the market for a new PC and you're interested in VR stuff, this might be worth taking a look at. Now, continuing to talk about VR, sort of, something I would like to see in VR, there's a guy that figured out a way to take his iPhone and turn it into a 360, not even 360, but a filming slow motion spinning camera. Really hard to describe, you kind of just have to see it. He put his iPhone on a string while he was skiing, put it in slow-mo and told it to film, and then did this while he was skiing. The animated image I've got in front of me looks amazing. The video looked awesome. Just go check it out. Not something I could see really doing, not something I could see being feasible, but still really unique and innovative idea. Now, coming back to what I mentioned in the intro, Dragon Ball Z. There was a video released about the one cool way to ride a hoverboard, and that is by making it into one of the flying clouds you'll find in Dragon Ball. I've been saying Dragon Ball Z all along. Dragon Ball Z, it all runs together for me. But there's a video where a guy cosplayed as Goku, decked out his hoverboard with the flying cloud, and flew around in the streets of Taipei. Super cool stuff. Actually harkens me back to the Casey Neistat, Jesse Wells video about being Aladdin in New York City on the flying carpet. That's another video you ought to check out, and I'll try to remember to link to it down below as well. And speaking of just really cool videos, Techno Buffalo linked to this, but it's a YouTube user called CrowBeeCat did an experiment in Portal to find out what would happen if you trapped yourself between the 2 sides of the portal. And it is trippy and awesome. That's about as far as I'll go with it. I mean, it's just mind-blowing kind of cool, the kind of stuff you wouldn't really have expected to have come out of the game. And it's cool to see that the game developers kind of decided to put something like this in there. I'm sure it was not included in the default game. They had to actually do some tweaking to it to make it happen, but very, very cool stuff. So you got a bunch of cool videos to check out there. And wrapping things up with all the sciencey type stuff, a company out of the US called Viasat has teamed up with Boeing to launch a satellite that promises to deliver ultra-high-speed internet to remote areas. They talk in the article about launching several different generations of satellite, but the end goal of this is to have 1 terabit per second connectivity from a satellite. Now that does trickle down. It's not going to be 1 terabit per second per person. They say it would actually be more like 100 megabit per second service to remote residential people, so like perhaps my in-laws who live way out in the middle of nowhere and can't get good service. 100 megabits per second via satellite. Now, if it's anything like the satellite service I've experienced in the past, download speeds are awesome, upload speeds are terrible. So I'll be curious to see how that's going to turn out. For the next story, I've seen about a dozen sites reporting on this. Scientists have figured out that gravitational waves do exist. They are a thing. Einstein predicted it way back in the day. They do exist. I honestly cannot tell you what that means for science, what that means for the world, what that means for the universe. But just reading further into the article while I sat here for 2 or 3 minutes, it looks like this is actually going to be really useful for learning a lot more about things in the universe we haven't really been able to observe because either they're too dark, they're too far away, whatever else. Gravitational waves, if we can actually observe them, will let us know what's going on in those places like black holes that we can't actually see, or with relation to things like dark matter. The entirety of astrophysics is about to change. Physics in general, science in general, the way that we think of the universe. It's all changing, and it's gonna be awesome. And one last thing that I thought was cool, it's kind of like a superhero tech science mixture. There's a new polymer that's been created by the University of Rochester that is capable of lifting 1,000 times its own weight. So we're talking about the Spider-Man polymer here. They're talking about using it to stitch you up after you've had surgery. If you could turn it into some kind of a rope, that would be amazing. And it changes its shape based upon temperature. So I mean, technically based upon the heat or the cold that you apply to it, if you tune it to change its shape appropriately based upon that, you could technically have something that is super springy and super flexible, and then you hit a button and it retracts or something. This just sounds like another really cool potential let's see what happens with it a few years down the road kind of thing. And you know what? I think that's where I'm going to stop for today. My tablet's about to die. I've been going on for entirely too long. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for supporting this series. Make sure to leave me a thumbs up below if you enjoyed this video. You can subscribe to receive all of my videos when they become available if you want to. I've been putting out an awful lot of them lately, so there will be one linked here in just a second at the end card. There'll also be info about my Twitter and Facebook and my daily vlogging channel and everything else there if you want to check any of those things out. I'm even on Snapchat occasionally. So thanks again for watching. I do appreciate it, and we'll see you again next time. Aren't any big issues with it. I've used it for some light gaming. As you can see, I do have several games installed there, and it's not the absolute best out there, but compared to some of the newer chips, it definitely keeps up at mid-range.